She called him Daddy. Those words still echo in my ears. It was raining that day at the cemetery in Charleston. The smell of wet earth filled the air as a strange woman and 2 children knelt before my son's grave. In the child's small hand was a pine leaf-shaped bracelet, and in that moment, my heart broke. I held it in, I cried, and then I decided I needed to know the truth. What really happened that day? Let me tell you the story. You're listening to Silver Story Tree, where the voices of life's late chapters gently bloom again. Subscribe, like, and turn on the bell to hear more heartfelt stories that grow with time. The sound of rain tapping on the tombstone. It had been so long since I heard that sound. I stood at Magnolia Cemetery in Charleston, South Carolina, pulling up the collar of my black coat. I planted my feet firmly on the wet earth. Today was the day I would relocate my son Daniel's grave. It needed to be moved closer to the company headquarters. Being the founder of Holloway Foods meant making these kinds of decisions alone. This cemetery, perched on a hill outside Charleston, was over 150 years old. Ancient oak trees surrounded the burial grounds, and autumn leaves, soaked by rain, covered the stone pathways. I had walked this path every month for the past 2 years. Since losing my son, 4 workers stood waiting with shovels. All wore work clothes and caps, waiting for me. I nodded to them. Let's begin. My voice trembled strangely. It was odd. I had run a company for over 20 years without my voice shaking once. In board meetings, at negotiation tables, even in court. I'd always been composed. But today was different. Moving my son's grave was harder than I'd expected. That's when it happened. I heard footsteps approaching through the rain. Splash, splash. The sound of someone stepping in puddles. A woman without an umbrella, her hair dripping wet, approached the grave with 2 children. She knelt down and stroked the tombstone with both hands, as if caressing someone alive. Daniel, we're here. The woman spoke in a choked voice. I froze in place. The black leather gloves I'd been holding slipped smoothly from my hands and fell onto the wet ground. I tried to ask what she'd said, but no voice came out. Only my lips trembled. The 2 children knelt before the tombstone and spoke. Daddy, we miss you. We came with Mommy. The weather was bad and we almost couldn't come, but Mommy said we had to. The children's voices were clear. They looked about 5 years old. Twins, perhaps. Both wore the same blue raincoats, and held white chrysanthemums in their small hands. The wind grew fierce. Rain lashed the tombstone, and oak branches swayed. Only then did I step forward. My voice had turned cold. Who are you? The woman slowly raised her head. Her eyes were red, and she clutched a worn cloth bag. She looked to be in her mid-30s. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. My name is Emily Carter. And these children are Daniel's. The world stopped. A ringing sound filled my ears. The rain, the wind, everything disappeared except that woman's voice. Daniel's children. Those words kept circling in my head. I asked again, what are you saying? My son has no children. The woman named Emily pulled out a small wooden box from her bag. The box looked old. Its edges were worn, and the lid had cracks. One child opened the box and carefully pulled out a necklace, extending it toward me. The small hand was shaking. Daddy said to give this to Grandma. He said to make sure to give it to you. The moment I saw the necklace, my heart seemed to stop. It was the pine needle pendant I had designed 30 years ago. Made of silver. I'd given it to Daniel when he was 22, when he graduated from college. I had told him pine needles stay green through all 4 seasons. So you should live strong like that. He'd worn it around his neck his entire life, even on the day of the accident that took him from this world. I took the necklace. My hands trembled. The metal was cold. When I flipped it over, I saw the initials engraved on the back. D.H. Daniel Holloway. No mistake. This was my son's. The workers were staring at me. The rain fell harder. My clothes were soaked through, but I didn't care. I raised my head and looked directly at Emily. Can you prove it, that what you're saying is true? Emily nodded. I can. But not here. The children are cold. The children were indeed shivering in the rain. I could see their lips turning blue. I took a deep breath and made a decision. The relocation is postponed. I told the workers. Everyone go home. I'll contact you again. The foreman tried to ask something, but I raised my hand to stop him. Then I turned to Emily. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, come to my office. The address is on my card. Emily took my card with trembling hands. I understand. I'll be there. I returned to my car. I started the engine but couldn't drive away. I watched them in the rearview mirror. Emily was holding both children, standing before the tombstone for a long time. The sight pierced my heart. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed at the Charleston hotel suite, staring at the ceiling. Holding my son's necklace, I looked out the window. Rain fell all night, and streetlights glistened in the rainwater. One thought kept circling in my mind. If that woman's words were true, what had my son hidden from me? Why hadn't he told me? And were those children really my grandchildren? When I held up the necklace, the silver gleamed faintly. After 30 years of my son wearing it, the polish had worn away. But the pine needle design was still clear. I pressed the necklace to my chest and closed my eyes. Daniel, what did you leave for your mother? The next morning, I didn't wait for Emily at my office. Instead, I woke at 5 and drove to Savannah, Georgia. The address Emily had given me yesterday wouldn't leave my mind. Checking directly seemed faster than waiting. I drove without turning on the radio. On the highway, I kept replaying last night's events. The woman and children in the rain, and my son's necklace. It all felt like a dream. But the necklace on the passenger seat told me it was real. After 2 hours of driving, I arrived at a quiet residential area. The outskirts of Old Savannah. A street lined with Victorian-style houses. At the end of the alley, I saw a worn wooden sign. Carter's Bakery. The peeling paint made it barely readable. I parked in front of the shop and hesitated. It was only 7 in the morning. Too early, but light was seeping from inside the shop. Someone was already working. I got out of the car and stood before the bakery door. The wooden door was old but clean. Through the glass window, I could see inside. Emily was rolling dough at a large wooden table. Her hair tied back, wearing a white apron. She was kneading with all her strength. Morning sunlight streamed through the window onto her face. Beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. Watching her, I thought this woman is hardworking. I pushed open the door. Ding-a-ling. The bell rang cheerfully. An old-fashioned bronze bell. Emily looked up with a startled expression. Her hands were white with flour. "Mrs. Holloway, I didn't expect you so early," she said, flustered. I nodded and walked slowly inside. "I came to hear your story." Properly. Emily hurriedly wiped her hands and removed her apron. She gestured toward a small table at the back of the shop, offering a chair. I didn't sit. I stood, looking around. The shop was small but cozy. An old brick oven sat in one corner, and wooden shelves held freshly baked bread. Baguettes, sourdough, croissants. The smell of baking bread filled the shop. A warm, savory scent. A few photos hung on the wall. Pictures of Emily and the children, and I stopped. In one photo, I could see the back of a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, a child riding on his shoulders. I pointed at that photo. "Who is that?" Emily answered quietly. "That's Daniel." I approached the photo. I couldn't see his face. But even from the back, I could tell. It was my son. That distinctive way of standing, his left shoulder slightly tilted. I turned to Emily. "When did you meet my son?" Emily closed her eyes for a moment. Then slowly began her story. 7 years ago, when Daniel came to inspect the Savannah branch, Holloway Foods was planning to open a new distribution center in this area. I was working part-time at this bakery then. The original owner was different, but I came every morning to help bake bread. It was around 6 one morning. Not a time for customers, but the door opened. It was Daniel. He said he'd come on business but couldn't sleep. He ordered just one coffee. I made him coffee, and he sat by the window watching the sunrise. He came the next day too. And the next. Every day for a week. Always the same time, the same seat. Then one day he asked if I could teach him how to bake bread. I crossed my arms. And then, Emily continued, we grew close that way. After his business trip ended, Daniel came to Savannah every weekend. Under the pretense of learning to bake. But we both knew, it was just an excuse. We loved each other, truly. We cared for each other, and the time together was happy. But he was already married. To Linda. He wanted a divorce, but it wasn't easy. There was the company, and various complicated circumstances. So we had to keep it hidden. My heart sank. And those children. Emily nodded. They're twins, 5 years old now. Daniel loved the children so much. He came every weekend to spend time with them, baking bread together, going to the park, reading to them. The children really loved their daddy. I held my breath. I was angry, but at the same time strangely, part of my heart was collapsing. That my son had lived this way. I had known nothing. For 2 years I'd grieved, thinking my son was dead, when actually he'd created another family. You said you could prove it. Do you have evidence? Emily went to the back of the shop. She returned with an old wooden drawer. When she opened it, I saw various items. Photos, letters, receipts, and a small metal key. Emily carefully pulled out the key and held it toward me. He left this a month before the accident. One day he came with a serious expression and gave me this key. He said if anything happened to him, I should use it. That it opened a bank vault. The key was small but looked heavy. Silver, with letters engraved on the hand. D.H. Daniel Holloway. And a number. 324. I took the key. Cold and solid. What does this unlock? Emily said. A bank vault. He said First National Bank, Charleston branch. Vault number 324. I don't know what's inside. But Daniel said if he went first, I should show what's inside to you. That's when the children ran out from the back room. In pajamas, with messy hair and sleepy eyes, they looked at me. One of them asked, "Are you Grandma? The grandma from the cemetery yesterday?" I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up. The child approached and took my hand. A small, warm hand. Daddy showed us pictures. He said Grandma is really amazing. That you built a big company. I held that small hand tightly. I wanted to cry but held it back. Emily hugged the child and said, "Daniel always said I can't tell Mom yet, but someday I will. And when that time comes, Mom will accept us. Mom seems cold on the outside but is warm inside," he said. I closed my eyes. My son never got to create that someday. The accident came first. I put the key in my pocket and said, "I'll go to the bank. Until then, don't tell anyone. Especially not the press." Emily bowed her head. "I understand. We don't want anything. We just want the children to remember their father." Leaving the bakery, I looked back. Through the glass window, Emily was preparing breakfast for the children. The children were laughing. It looked peaceful. They had faces that resembled my son. First National Bank was on Main Street in downtown Charleston. I'd driven 2 hours back from Savannah. As I stood at the bank's front door, the bell rang announcing 10 o'clock. I pushed open the heavy bronze door and entered a spacious lobby. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor. I went to the reception desk. A young employee smiled and asked, "How may I help you?" I pulled out the metal key and showed it. "I need to open a vault." The employee looked at the key and checked the computer. "Could you tell me the vault number?" 324. The employee looked at the screen for a moment and nodded. "Confirmed. It's registered under Daniel Holloway. May I see your ID?" I pulled out my ID from my wallet. "Margaret Holloway." The employee checked it and looked surprised. "You're the CEO of Holloway Foods." "I apologize. I'll get the vault manager." Soon an older male employee appeared. Wearing a neat gray suit and glasses, a gentleman. "Mrs. Holloway, this way please." I followed him down to the vault room. The stairs felt unusually long. Thump, thump, only the sound of my heels hitting the stone steps. My heart was beating fast. What was in the vault? Why had my son hidden this? The basement vault door opened. A thick metal door. Inside was cool. Fluorescent lights cast cold light on the metal walls. The employee stopped at vault 324. "Here it is. You can insert the key." I inserted the key into the vault. My hands trembled. Click. The sound of the lock opening. The employee opened the vault door. "If you need anything, call me. I'll be outside." He quietly left. I stood alone before the vault. Inside the vault was a small cabinet. A wooden box. I took it out and placed it on a nearby table, slowly opening the lid. Inside were several items. A USB drive. Black, with a label that read, "To Mom," in Daniel's handwriting. 2 envelopes. One yellow, one white. And a crayon drawing. I picked up the drawing. A child's drawing. Clumsy but sincere. 4 people holding hands. A tall man, a woman, and 2 small children. Above the man it said, "Daddy," above the woman, "Mommy," and above the children, "Us." Everyone was smiling. Looking at the drawing, my heart ached. That my son had been this happy. But that he couldn't tell me. I took out the USB drive. I asked the bank employee to borrow a laptop. I plugged in the USB and opened the file. There was one file, an audio file. The title was To Mom. MP3. I pressed play. Silence for a moment. Then sound flowed from the speakers. Mom. That one word made tears well up. I bit my lip to hold them back. It was my son's voice. My son's voice that I hadn't heard in 2 years. Daniel's voice was calm. If you're listening to this recording, I've probably gone first. Mom, I'm sorry for not telling you about Emily and the children. I won't make excuses. I was wrong. To Linda, to you, to everyone. But one thing is certain. I love them. I love Emily and I love the children. Even if that love was wrong, I don't regret it. The time with them was the happiest time of my life. Mom, please. If I'm gone, please protect them. The children. Emily. They did nothing wrong. They're people who had to hide because of me. You've been strong all your life, Mom. You built Holloway Foods, fed hundreds of people, became a respected businesswoman. With that strength, please now protect my children too. I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry. The recording ended there. I closed the laptop and bowed my head. Tears fell, but I didn't wipe them. That my son had lived this way. That he'd loved this way and that I'd learned about it too late. I opened the yellow envelope. Inside was a draft will. It had no legal effect, but it was written in my son's handwriting. I, Daniel Holloway, leave 30% of my assets to Emily Carter and her children, and the right to use the Holloway name. I opened the white envelope. Inside were photographs. Pictures of Daniel and Emily, pictures with the children. Pictures in front of the Savannah Bakery. Everyone looked happy. I folded the documents and put the photos back in the envelope. Now it was clear what I had to do. I needed to verify the truth. Legally and definitively, starting with a DNA test. When I returned to the company, my secretary Paul Myers was waiting at the door. A capable employee in his early 30s. I spoke to him quietly. Paul, find a DNA testing agency that can handle this discreetly. Don't tell anyone. Paul asked carefully. Not even Vice President Richard? Especially not him. This is a family matter. Richard Glenn was the company's vice president. Mid-50s, capable but conservative. He prioritized company image above all, choosing stability over truth. If he found out, he would surely try to stop it. Paul secured a testing agency within 2 days. A specialized lab in Atlanta. He said it guaranteed strict confidentiality. I drove back to Savannah myself. I took Emily and the children to Atlanta. The car was quiet. The children looked at picture books in the back seat. And Emily gazed out the window. The testing center was in a quiet building. We were guided to a private room. The test was simple. Swabbing the inside of the children's mouths with a cotton swab. During the test, I watched the children's faces closely. Their eyebrows were exactly like Daniel's. The way their mouths curved when they smiled. Their long fingers. They were the spitting image of my son. After the test, the staff member said, "Results will come in 1 week. We'll email them to you." That week felt long. Every morning I checked my email. I couldn't focus on company work. Even during meetings, I kept looking at the clock. During that week, I kept examining the USB. Besides the audio file, there were other files. Document files, photo folders, and one hidden folder. At the end of the file list was a small folder. Titled, Will Draft. Docs. When I opened it, it was a Word document. Daniel had written it. The date was 2 months before the accident. Reading the contents, I cried. Mom, please create a scholarship foundation in my name. So that the love that had to be hidden can now be revealed. Help children growing up without parents, parents raising children alone. Please do what I couldn't finish. I stared at the screen for a long time. My son had already planned everything. Even the future without him. First National Bank was on Main Street in downtown Charleston. I'd driven 2 hours back from Savannah. As I stood at the bank's front door, the bell rang announcing 10 o'clock. I pushed open the heavy bronze door and entered a spacious lobby. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor. I went to the reception desk. A young employee smiled and asked, "How may I help you?" I pulled out the metal key and showed it. "I need to open a vault." The employee looked at the key and checked the computer. Could you tell me the vault number? 324. The employee looked at the screen for a moment and nodded. Confirmed. It's registered under Daniel Holloway. May I see your ID? I pulled out my ID from my wallet. Margaret Holloway. The employee checked it and looked surprised. You're the CEO of Holloway Foods. I apologize. I'll get the vault manager. Soon an older male employee appeared. Wearing a neat gray suit and glasses, a gentleman. Mrs. Holloway, this way please. I followed him down to the vault room. The stairs felt unusually long. Thump, thump, only the sound of my heels hitting the stone steps. My heart was beating fast. What was in the vault? Why had my son hidden this? The basement vault door opened. A thick metal door. Inside was cool. Fluorescent lights cast cold light on the metal walls. The employee stopped at vault 324. Here it is. You can insert the key. I inserted the key into the vault. My hands trembled. Click. The sound of the lock opening. The employee opened the vault door. If you need anything, call me. I'll be outside. He quietly left. I stood alone before the vault. Inside the vault was a small cabinet. A wooden box. I took it out and placed it on a nearby table, slowly opening the lid. Inside were several items. A USB drive. Black, with a label that read, "To Mom," in Daniel's handwriting. 2 envelopes. One yellow, one white. And a crayon drawing. I picked up the drawing. A child's drawing. Clumsy but sincere. 4 people holding hands. A tall man, a woman, and 2 small children. Above the man it said, "Daddy," above the woman, "Mommy," and above the children, "Us." Everyone was smiling. Looking at the drawing, my heart ached. That my son had been this happy. But that he couldn't tell me. I took out the USB drive. I asked the bank employee to borrow a laptop. I plugged in the USB and opened the files. There was one file, an audio file. The title was "To Mom." MP3. I pressed play. Silence for a moment. Then sound flowed from the speakers. Mom. That one word made tears well up. I bit my lip to hold them back. It was my son's voice. My son's voice that I hadn't heard in 2 years. Daniel's voice was calm. If you're listening to this recording, I've probably gone first. Mom, I'm sorry for not telling you about Emily and the children. I won't make excuses. I was wrong. To Linda, to you, to everyone. But one thing is certain. I love them. I love Emily and I love the children. Even if that love was wrong, I don't regret it. The time with them was the happiest time of my life. Mom, please. If I'm gone, please protect them. The children. Emily. They did nothing wrong. They're people who had to hide because of me. You've been strong all your life, Mom. You built Holloway Foods, fed hundreds of people, became a respected businesswoman. With that strength, please now protect my children too. I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry. The recording ended there. I closed the laptop and bowed my head. Tears fell, but I didn't wipe them. That my son had lived this way. That he'd loved this way and that I'd learned about it too late. I opened the yellow envelope. Inside was a draft will. It had no legal effect, but it was written in my son's handwriting. I, Daniel Holloway, leave 30% of my assets to Emily Carter and her children, and the right to use the Holloway name. I opened the white envelope. Inside were photographs. Pictures of Daniel and Emily, pictures with the children. Pictures in front of the Savannah Bakery. Everyone looked happy. I folded the documents and put the photos back in the envelope. Now it was clear what I had to do. I needed to verify the truth. Legally and definitively. Starting with a DNA test. When I returned to the company, my secretary Paul Myers was waiting at the door. A capable employee in his early 30s. I spoke to him quietly. Paul, find a DNA testing agency that can handle this discreetly. Don't tell anyone. Paul asked carefully. Not even Vice President Richard? Especially not him. This is a family matter. Richard Glenn was the company's vice president. Mid-50s, capable but conservative. He prioritized company image above all, choosing stability over truth. If he found out, he would surely try to stop it. Paul secured a testing agency within 2 days. A specialized lab in Atlanta. He said it guaranteed strict confidentiality. I drove back to Savannah myself. I took Emily and the children to Atlanta. The car was quiet. The children looked at picture books in the back seat. And Emily gazed out the window. The testing center was in a quiet building. We were guided to a private room. The test was simple: swabbing the inside of the children's mouths with a cotton swab. During the test, I watched the children's faces closely. Their eyebrows were exactly like Daniel's. The way their mouths curved when they smiled. Their long fingers. They were the spitting image of my son. After the test, the staff member said, "Results will come in 1 week. We'll email them to you." That week felt long. Every morning I checked my email. I couldn't focus on company work. Even during meetings, I kept looking at the clock. During that week, I kept examining the USB. Besides the audio file, there were other files. Document files, photo folders, and one hidden folder. At the end of the file list was a small folder titled, "Will Draft. Docs." When I opened it, it was a Word document. Daniel had written it. The date was 2 months before the accident. Reading the contents, I cried. "Mom, please create a scholarship foundation in my name, so that the love that had to be hidden can now be revealed. Help children growing up without parents, parents raising children alone. Please do what I couldn't finish." I stared at the screen for a long time. My son had already planned everything, even the future without him. With the video paused, I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands trembled. The pine needle bracelet. I had designed it 30 years ago when Daniel was 20. In a small workshop in downtown Charleston, we made it together. Daniel was taking design classes then, and though I was busy with company work, I made time to go with him on weekends. Daniel had said, "Mom, pine needles stay green through all seasons. Let's make this as a symbol that our family will always be together." That day we made 2 necklaces and 2 bracelets. One for me, one for Daniel. But now I saw that my son had passed that bracelet to his own child. Paul asked carefully, "Madam President, are you all right?" I nodded. "Make copies of this video. Several copies. And arrange for legal consultation. I need legal advice." The next morning, Richard came to my office again. He watched the video and sighed deeply. "Madam President, this alone isn't enough. Not to legally prove paternity. The video is only circumstantial evidence. The court will require scientific proof." I looked out the window. "I know. That's why I'm preparing the DNA test. But there's something I need to do first." "What?" "Moral proof. Showing that we don't hide the truth." Richard shook his head. "Madam President, I don't know if the company can handle it. The shareholders' meeting is next month. If this breaks, there will be chaos. We must do it for the company. A company that hides truth won't last. Eventually it comes out, and then the damage is worse. Better to disclose it transparently now, on our terms." He said nothing more, but I could see worry in his eyes. I instructed Paul, "File a paternity confirmation lawsuit with the Georgia Family Court. Request a closed hearing. Don't inform the press yet." A week later, the first court hearing was held. The Atlanta Family Court. An old building. After climbing the marble stairs, a long hallway stretched ahead. The court corridor was cold. Only fluorescent lights hummed, and people spoke in low voices. Emily was already there with the children. They sat on a corridor bench. The children were holding their mother's hands tightly with nervous expressions. Emily wore a black suit, looking different from the bakery. She looked stronger. I approached them. "It will be okay today." Emily nodded. "Thank you." That's when I heard the sound of heels from the other end of the corridor. Click-clack. Someone was walking quickly. It was Linda Holloway, Daniel's legal spouse. She wore a gray suit. Her hair was neatly tied up, light makeup, but I could see her eyes were red. A lawyer followed her. Linda stopped when she saw Emily. The 2 women faced each other in the corridor. The air grew tense. Linda spoke sharply. "What right do you have to take my husband's name?" Emily answered calmly. "These children have the right to carry his name." Tears welled in Linda's eyes. "He was my husband. We lived together for 15 years. You only knew him for a few years." Emily said, "The length of time doesn't matter. What matters is who he loved." Linda covered her face with her hand. She was suffering too. Her husband's betrayal, and all this truth being exposed to the world. I stood between them. "Linda, we're all victims. But the children did nothing wrong." Linda looked at me. "Mother-in-law, is this really the right thing? What about the company? Our family's honor? Honor must be built on truth. Honor built on lies will eventually crumble." The courtroom door opened. A court clerk came out and called, "Holloway versus Holloway paternity case. Please enter." We all entered the courtroom. The judge entered and the hearing began. Evidence submission, witness examination, and a DNA test order was issued. The judge said, "Both parties will undergo DNA testing at an accredited testing facility. Submit the results at the next hearing." Leaving the court, my phone rang. It was Paul's voice. "Madam President, the testing agency called. The results are ready." I stopped in the corridor. "What did they say?" "They sent it by email. Would you like to check now?" My heart sank. I sat on a corridor bench and opened my laptop, connected to Wi-Fi and refreshed my email. A new email appeared. The subject was simple: paternity test results notification. My fingers trembled. I clicked on the email. A PDF file was attached. I opened it. Numbers appeared on the screen. Technical terms, statistics, and the final line. Probability of paternity 99.99%. Conclusion: paternity confirmed. The results were clear. Probability of paternity 99.99%. Paternity confirmed. That short sentence changed my life. I slowly closed the laptop. I couldn't breathe. Now it was certain. Those children were truly my grandchildren. Daniel's children. Sitting on the corridor bench, I couldn't move for a long time. People passed by me, lawyers, parties, but I saw nothing. Only a humming sound in my ears. Paul came running. "Madam President, are you all right?" I looked up at him. The results came. Paternity confirmed. Paul was silent for a moment, then asked carefully, "What will you do?" "Call an emergency meeting. Board of directors." This evening, when I returned to the company, the directors had already gathered. Richard, legal team chief, finance director, PR director. All with serious expressions. They had heard the rumors about Daniel's illegitimate children. I entered the boardroom and closed the door. Then I placed the test results on the table. The air in the boardroom stopped. Richard picked up the document. He read for a long time, then slowly bowed his head. His hands were shaking. "We can't cover this up anymore," the legal team chief said. "Madam President, there's no legal problem. With paternity confirmed, inheritance rights are recognized. But we need a press response. Better we announce first, before the media does." The PR director added, "We'll prepare a statement, asking to respect the family's privacy." I looked at each of them, then said, "Press response comes later. There's something I need to do first. I need to meet Linda." That evening, I met Linda. A quiet cafe on the outskirts of Charleston, overlooking a lake. Linda sat by the window. Her eyes were red, holding torn tissues. I sat across from her. The results came. Linda nodded. "I know. My lawyer told me." She looked out the window. 2 swans floated on the lake. A peaceful scene. "Mother-in-law, I'll be honest. I'm angry at Daniel and at that woman. We lived together for 15 years, and I can't believe he betrayed me." I cried alone every night, wondering why he didn't tell me what I lacked. I held her hand. "Linda, I'm sorry. I failed as a mother to teach my son properly." Linda shook her head. "No, love is no one's fault. Just bad timing." She pulled out a photo from her bag. Daniel and Linda's wedding photo. Both young and happy. Every time I look at this photo, I think we loved each other once. Where did it go wrong? When did Daniel stop loving me? I couldn't answer. Linda continued, "But yesterday at court, I saw those children. They had Daniel's eyes. When they smiled, their mouths curved the same way. Their fingers were long, just like him. In that moment I knew. Daniel really loved them." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Maybe I was selfish, not letting go of Daniel, holding on out of pride. But now I understand. Those children need their father too. I hugged Linda. We both cried. Through the conference room windows, the setting sun was visible. That night I opened the USB again. I scrolled to the end of the file list. Another hidden folder appeared, named Last Request 2. Inside the folder was a video file, titled, "To Mom." MP4. I pressed play. Daniel appeared on screen, sitting in his study, smiling at the camera. That smile I knew so well. "Mom, if you're watching this, I've gone first. And you've probably met Emily and the children." Daniel's voice was calm. "Mom, this is my last request. Please create a scholarship foundation in my name. The Daniel Holloway Scholarship Foundation. And the people it helps: single parents raising children alone. Children growing up without parents, those people. I want the love that had to be hidden to be revealed now. Just as I couldn't openly love Emily and the children, there are many people in the world who must hide their love. I want to give them courage. The Holloway name you've protected all your life, please add new meaning to it. That it's a name that protects families. I love you, Mom. And please. The video ended. I looked at the screen and murmured, "This is what you truly wanted." The next morning, I called Emily. "We need to meet." Daniel left more messages. Emily came to the company with the children. I guided them to my office. The children looked around the spacious office with wonder. Photos on the walls, books on shelves, the large desk made their eyes widen. I showed Emily the USB video. Emily watched the screen and cried. He really thought of everything. Even us. I looked at the children. They were looking out the window. Downtown Charleston spread below. It's time to keep the promise. I'll do what my son wanted. 2 months later, Charleston County Courthouse. Spring had come. Magnolia blossoms bloomed in the courthouse courtyard. White petals swayed in the wind. Emily, the children, and I climbed the courthouse steps together. The courtroom was quiet. The judge was reviewing documents. Paternity test results, name change applications. Supporting materials had all been submitted. The judge removed his glasses and looked at us. Then he raised his gavel. The court approves the petitioner's name change. Effective today, Sophia Carter and Eden Carter are renamed Sophia Holloway and Eden Holloway. Furthermore, with paternity established, inheritance rights are recognized. Bang! The gavel struck. The children held my hands tight. I hugged them. Now they were truly Holloways. Legally and legitimately. Emily cried. Thank you so much. Coming down the courthouse steps, Paul was waiting with a briefcase. He was smiling. Madam President, the foundation paperwork is ready. Department of Justice approval received. I took the papers. On the first page in large letters, the Daniel Holloway Scholarship Foundation. The name was clear. A week later, a board meeting was held in the company headquarters conference room. One agenda item: establishment of the Holloway Scholarship Foundation. And company support. Initial funding of $5 million. Richard stood up. I vote in favor of this proposal. And personally, I'll donate $100,000 to the foundation. The boardroom went quiet. Everyone looked surprised. Richard had been the one opposing this. He continued, I've thought only about company image for so long. But real image is made by what we do. Holloway Foods will now be a company that protects families. Applause rang out. Linda also stood. She wore a black suit. Her hair was neatly tied, expression calm. I'll also donate part of my inheritance to the foundation. For the people Daniel loved. And, please tell the children I'm sorry. I looked at her. Peace rested on Linda's face. After painful times, she had finally accepted it. The vote proceeded. Unanimous approval. A press conference for the foundation was held. In the company headquarters lobby. Journalists swarmed, camera flashes went off. I stood at the podium. Emily and the children stood beside me. A reporter asked, Madam President, are you acknowledging Vice President Daniel's illegitimate children? I stood before the microphone. My voice was firm. The term illegitimate children is inappropriate. They are my grandchildren, Holloway family. DNA testing confirmed paternity and the court recognized it. Our company doesn't sell truth. We share trust. And we protect families. Applause rang out. Even among the journalists, applause started. Another reporter asked, what is the foundation's purpose? I answered, the Daniel Holloway Scholarship Foundation will help single parents raising children and children growing up without parents. Tuition support, living expenses, psychological counseling, job placement, comprehensive help. It's what my son wanted. After the press conference, I took Emily and the children to a quiet room. The children looked tired. Sophia asked, Grandma, are we really Holloways now? I knelt and met the child's eyes. Yes, you're Holloways now. And be proud of that name. Eden asked, would Daddy be proud? I hugged the child. Of course. Daddy's smiling from heaven right now. That afternoon, Richard came to my office. Holding an envelope. His expression was peaceful. Madam President, my resignation. I was surprised. Why? You're essential to this company. Richard smiled. Thank you, but it's time for me to move on. Thank you, Madam President, for giving me a chance at redemption. Thanks to you, I realized that protecting truth is more important than protecting the company. I held his hand. Good luck wherever you go. He bowed and left. The door closed, and I looked out the window. Charleston Harbor was visible. Ships coming and going. Paul knocked. Madam President, court registration completed. The foundation officially launched too. Those children are now fully Holloways legally. I nodded. Thank you, Paul. That evening, I rummaged through an old drawer. The drawer with Daniel's childhood things. Opening a wooden box, I found a silver pocket watch. I'd given it to Daniel for his 18th birthday. An antique watch. I opened the lid. Inside was a small engraving. Pine needle design. I had carved it myself. I held the watch and closed my eyes. Tick-tock, the watch ticked softly. Daniel, I've kept all the promises you left. Rest peacefully now. A month passed. Magnolia Cemetery looked completely different. Unlike that rainy day when we'd come to relocate, today the sunshine was warm. Spring breeze blew between the graves. And magnolias and cherry blossoms were in full bloom. Emily, Sophia, Eden, and I walked through the cemetery together. The children each held bouquets. White chrysanthemums. We stood before Daniel's tombstone. Sunshine gently embraced it. I knelt and cleaned the tombstone. Wiping away dust, removing moss, cleaning it carefully. Sophia removed the pine needle bracelet from her wrist. With small hands she carefully took it off and placed it before the tombstone. Grandpa, I'm returning this. Because Grandma protects us now. I knelt and met Sophia's eyes. Why are you returning it? Sophia said. Daddy said this design means protection. Mommy told me. Grandma gave it to Daddy, and Daddy gave it to us. But now Grandma protects us, so I think we should return it to Grandpa. Tears welled in my eyes. My throat choked. I put the bracelet back on Sophia's wrist. You keep this. It's a promise to protect you. Grandma will keep it, and Grandpa will keep it from heaven. Eden asked. Grandma, is Grandpa really watching from heaven? I looked up at the sky. A cloudless blue sky. Of course. He's watching us right now. Seeing us together. Emily placed her hand on my shoulder. Now we all keep that promise. As family. I pulled out a small metal box from my bag. Inside were the USB and copies of the will. And a copy of the foundation establishment certificate. Evidence of everything Daniel wanted. I dug a small hole next to the tombstone and buried the box. Then covered it with earth again. Daniel, I did everything you wanted. The children are Holloways now. I made the foundation too. Your love doesn't have to be hidden anymore. Rest peacefully now. Wind blew. Magnolia petals fluttered down. White petals landed on the tombstone. The sound of pine winds circled my ears. The children knelt before the tombstone and prayed. Quietly, sincerely. Watching them, I thought Daniel was a wonderful father. Sophia asked, Grandma, can we come again next week? I stroked the child's head. We'll come every week. Because we're family. Emily smiled. The children placed small flowers before the tombstone. Then each spoke to their father. Eden said, Daddy, I'm a Holloway now. I got a new name tag at school. Sophia said, Daddy, Grandma told us about the foundation. It's named after you. It's so cool. I stood and looked up at the sky. Sunshine poured down. That day, I understood. Family isn't connected by blood alone. Of course blood matters, but true family is completed by the heart. That protects, to the end, in any situation. The words my son left protect them. I never knew that short promise would return with such great meaning. I finally fully understood what was contained in one pine needle design. When Daniel was 20, giving me that design, he'd said, Mom, this is a promise. To protect each other. Pine needles stay green through all seasons. So our family will be together forever. I've now passed that promise to my grandchildren. And that promise will continue. Leaving the cemetery, Eden looked back and waved. Daddy, I'll come again next week. I'll tell you what happened at school. Sophia also waved. Daddy, I love you. I watched them and smiled. The Holloway name wasn't just a surname. It was responsibility, promise, and above all, love. My son knew that. That's why he tried to protect it to the end. Getting in the car, I touched the pine needle watch on my wrist. Tick-tock, the watch ticked softly. A regular, warm sound. Emily took the wheel and asked, "Grandma, have you set the foundation opening ceremony date?" I nodded. "I'm planning it for Daniel's birthday next month. April 15th. The children said simultaneously from the back seat. "Can we go?" "Of course. You're the main characters. Because it's a place to remember Daddy." The car left the cemetery. Looking in the rearview mirror, I saw the magnolia tree. Branches swaying in the wind looked like waving hands. Petals flew up into the sky. I looked out the window and thought, life is so unpredictable. This story that began at a rainy cemetery ended as a warm family promise. If I hadn't met Emily and the children that day, if I'd turned away from the truth, this moment wouldn't exist. But I chose to face the truth, and now I know that choice was right. That family isn't determined by blood, but completed by the heart that protects to the end. And that heart I can now pass it completely to my 2 grandchildren. Along with the Holloway name, the single pine needle Daniel left ultimately protected the entire family. Afternoon sunshine poured into the car. It was warm. Sophia and Eden were sleeping in the back seat, holding hands. Emily was driving gently, and I watched the scenery outside. The road back to Charleston was peaceful. And I knew, this was just the beginning. There was foundation work, raising the children, continuing to run the company. But no, I wasn't alone. I had family. Real family. Some connected by blood, some connected by heart. And at the center of it all was the single pine needle Daniel left. Like pine needles that stay green through all seasons. Our family will be together forever. That was the last gift I could give my son. Everyone, have you ever faced the truth about a family you thought you had lost? Through this experience, I learned that what binds us most deeply is not blood, but the heart that chooses to stay and protect until the end. There was resentment, but in the end, what remained was courage and gratitude. Life is never too late, and love can always be restored. I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments. If my story touched your heart, please walk with me by subscribing and liking this channel. And if you know someone who might need this story, please share it with them. Thank you sincerely for spending your time with me today. Take care of your health, and may tomorrow be a warmer day for you.